This is Vincent Price, introducing you in our first picture to one of the world's most celebrated masterpieces, The Death of the Virgin by Mantegna. The museum that displays this majestic painting is Spanish, the world-famous Prado in Madrid. The Death of the Virgin was painted well over 400 years ago, but the grace and nobility of the figures, the poetic landscape in the background, the deeply religious emotion that envelops the picture as a whole, these are qualities that still give pleasure to the eye and inspiration to the spirit. The painting is beautiful but remote, in keeping with the grandeur of its subject. Now, for a contrast, let's move to number 2. There's nothing remote about the subject of this painting. This Renaissance cardinal appears to be looking across the centuries directly at us. Look at the vitality in his eyes, the tense but determined expression of his face, a superb portrait. It was painted by the incomparable Raphael. We see here how a master artist can capture the essence of human life on canvas and make it live forever. Our third picture shows us that Raphael was also capable of creating the most radiant visions of heaven. Have you ever seen a more beautiful Madonna? At the left, the Archangel Raphael presents Tobias, who, according to tradition, cured his father's blindness with that miraculous fish. From this serene and glowing painting of the beauties of the spirit, we turn in slide 4 to a picture which is a hymn to the pagan pleasures of the earth. The artist is another giant of the Renaissance, Titian. Feel the wonderfully rhythmic flow of movement in the scene. It calls to us to get up and join the dance, for life is short. In the bottom center of the painting, a scrap of paper bears this inscription: "He who drinks but once of wine will never know its charms divine." In our next painting, we see that Titian was capable of portraying the sterner aspects of life as well. An emperor charges into battle on a snorting black steed. There's no softness here. He is clad in burnished armor. The sky is tossed with clouds, symbolic of the storms of battle. This painting, which celebrates a famous victory, breathes with the spirit of military glory, and yet its mood is somber and heavy with the knowledge that to the victors belong not only spoils, but grim responsibilities. Number 6 takes us from a scene of war to one of love. The goddess Venus bends over Adonis, the sleeping mortal she loves, while Cupid keeps watch. Here is endless pleasure for the eye, the sumptuous fabrics, the flesh tones, the voluptuous feelings so typical of Venetian painting. The natural way the sunlight filters through the leaves and falls upon the body of Venus is the mark of Veronese, a pioneer in such effects. Our next painting shows us the work of another great Venetian painter, Tintoretto. As Veronese experimented with light, so Tintoretto did with movement. Feel the energy and drama in this biblical scene. Exaggerated proportions and perspective heighten attention and transform this painting into an experience charged with life, an experience we share. How different is the mood of picture 8. Here all is peace and contemplation. In the panel at the left, a monk prays, while the figure of John the Baptist stands behind him. At the right, the graceful Saint Barbara sits quietly reading. The minutely detailed objects and glossy enamel-like finish are typical of 15th century Flemish painting. This is thought to be the work of Campin. Now, if you will turn the slide card over to number 9, we will come to a lovely nativity scene painted by the Flemish artist Dirk Boots. This jewel-like little picture shows the Christ child being adored by the Virgin Mary, Saint Joseph, and white-robed angels. In the distance, a dream-like landscape. Surely no image of the story of Christmas has ever been more reverent. From the peaceful joy of the Nativity, we move in our next slide to the pathos of the crucifixion. Drama is the key to this composition. See how the artist, the Flemish Van der Weyden, has powerfully conveyed the emotions of the mourners as they tenderly lower Christ's body from the cross. The red-robed figure of St. John at the left supports the Virgin as she collapses in grief. A profound tragedy, a magnificent painting. In picture 11, we see the infant Christ being presented in the temple. The artist, Memling, dressed the figures in the costumes of his own day, and the temple is actually a Gothic church. Notice how the exaggerated tallness of the figures and the soaring columns add to the solemn grandeur of the scene. The imagination of great artists, as we see in our 12th painting, often distorts reality the way dreams do, and results in such strange and gripping fantasies as this storm-tossed Temptation of St. Anthony. The monkey in the foreground, waving a stick like a conductor's baton, while the pretty temptresses go about their work, he is the devil. This painting was a collaboration between Patenier, who is responsible for the wild landscape, and Matsis, who did the figures, a remarkable instance of artistic teamwork. Picture 13 shows us the work of another artist who gave full rein to his imagination. This adoration scene was painted by the Flemish master Bos as a 3-panel altarpiece. We feel we are looking out through the arches upon an incredible dream world where richly costumed kings kneel in homage to the child, while ordinary folk peer like caricatures of humanity from the doorway of the strangely warped house. A fantastic picture, but not half so bizarre as the one in number 14, also by Bos. The Garden of Delights it is called, but the Garden of Curiosities might be a better title. The artist's brush has turned pleasure-seeking mankind into a circus sideshow, a startling jumble of nude figures riding strange animals, holding huge fishes, cavorting in and out of pools. Satire is the intent here. Bos is telling us that all sensuous pleasure is folly. We return in our next slide to a more realistic world. Here is a proud self-portrait of the German Albrecht Dürer, artist, engraver, writer, and gentleman. He was one of the towering figures of the Renaissance, and in this elegant portrait with its superb blending of color and line, we see the stamp of a commanding personality. Dürer was interested, as we see in picture 16, in creating the ideal human form. Here are Adam and Eve, rendered with simplicity and beauty, with a delicate perfection of face and body becoming to the dwellers in the Garden of Eden. Since Dürer was German, his figures reflect the North European ideal of beauty. One of the pleasures of art is that it enables us to understand how standards of beauty differ from country to country, from age to age. Number 17 is one of the most remarkable paintings in the world. We are looking at the Triumph of Death by Bruegel. It reminds us of the fantastic paintings of Bos, but here fantasy is carried to the point of nightmare. Figures are massed and tumbled grotesquely. Death and destruction are everywhere. In the distance, flames and black smoke rise from a burning city. Why should an artist choose to paint a subject of so much horror? Well, art is sometimes a protest, and in this case, Bruegel was protesting the bloody religious wars of his time. This powerful painting shows us that the only victor in such a war is death itself. We move in number 18 from a scene of death to a painting that is a glorious symphony of life. It fairly bursts with joy and color as richly costumed figures move through an enchanted garden of love. The artist, Rubens, had a boisterous enthusiasm for everything life had to offer, and his exuberance overflowed onto canvases like this one. He even painted himself into the picture in a characteristic pose. See him dancing with the lady at the left? The boldness and flamboyance of both this painting and the one shown in slide 19 are the mark of Baroque art. Here Rubens has taken a subject from mythology and brought it to life with an incredible flow of violent movement. At the right, the goddess Diana threatens the attackers with a spear. Bodies and limbs twist and turn in a rhythm that is like a violent dance. It is this interwoven rhythm that ties the picture together, a masterful composition. And now, in our next slide, we turn from violent movement to quiet dignity. This handsome portrait of a 17th century nobleman is our first work by a Spanish painter, El Greco. He has painted here the ideal of a Spanish grandee, proudly erect, dedicated to honor and chivalry. See how the golden sword hilt and the touches of white at the neck and sleeve add just the right note of elegance to this somber portrait. Picture 21 shows us another of El Greco's works, a religious painting of enormous intensity. Note here how the artist has distorted and lengthened the figures to produce the effect of an otherworldly vision. God the Father, surrounded by angels, receives the body of Christ in heaven. Above them hovers a dove, symbol of the Holy Ghost. The Holy Dove is the focus of our next painting, also by El Greco. Its glowing wings are outstretched above the heads of the apostles as they receive the miraculous gift of tongues. In the elongated arm of the apostle at the left, El Greco again distorts anatomy, but see how much drama and vitality it adds to the painting. Another religious scene is brought to vivid life in picture 23. Note the strength of the composition, the way contrasting areas of dark and light add to the vitality and intensity of the picture. This powerful rendering of the martyrdom of St. Bartholomew is the work of the 17th century Spaniard Ribera. In slide 24, we see a vision of the martyrdom of St. Peter, portrayed by another Spanish artist, Zurbarán. Here is a painting bathed in golden light. St. Peter Nolasco is rewarded for his virtues with a vision of his patron saint, the Apostle Peter, who had been crucified upside down. This luminous painting glows with spiritual sincerity. Zurbarán was encouraged by a contemporary who was one of the greatest artists of all time. His name was Velázquez. If you will turn the slide card over to number 25, we will come to our first work by this giant of art. In this lively painting, we see the winner of a drinking contest being crowned by Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. Although the subject is mythological, the figures are as relaxed and informal as if they had been snapped by a candid camera. They seem to be inviting us to join the fun. This air of relaxation is the achievement of a master artist, for the painting is a complex one, tightly packed with figures. Velázquez is famous for his masterful compositions. Consider our next painting. It commemorates the Spanish conquest of a Dutch town. Our eyes are drawn to the center of the picture, where the Spanish general receives the surrender of the Dutch commander with courtesy and compassion. The lances in the right background balance the standard bearers in the left foreground. But above all, the painting is suffused with light and air, as is the painting shown in slide 27. Velázquez was much in demand at court, and here we see one of the reasons. A charming portrait of a 5-year-old Spanish prince with the sash of a field marshal. Though the tiny prince gazes imperiously at us, his charger reminds us of a rocking horse, a delightful picture. Number 28 introduces us to a companion of the prince's. It was traditional to keep dwarves in the Spanish court as jesters. They were expected to entertain with jokes and buffoonery. But notice the insight and dignity with which Velázquez painted this young dwarf, the lonely sadness beneath the mask of a jester. In picture 29, Velázquez has given us one of his most beautiful landscapes. This is the garden of the Villa Medici in Rome. As painted by the airy brush of Velázquez, it glows with light and with the wonder of nature. Incidentally, his experiments with light were later admired and studied by the French Impressionists, for light was the soul of Impressionism. Our 30th picture shows us a portion of another painting of Spanish royalty. This is the Queen Maria Luisa and her daughter. Although the portrait shimmers with rich detail, the sashes, the elaborate costumes, the sparkle of jewels in the hair, no attempt is made to flatter the subjects, even though they were royalty. For the artist Goya, another giant of Spanish art, refused to compromise with what his eyes saw. This unflinching attitude is still more apparent in number 31. On the 3rd of May, 1808, Napoleon's invading troops slaughtered many of the people of Madrid as punishment for an uprising. Goya, who all his life fought cruelty and injustice, has captured the full horror of the massacre. The 3rd of May is a savage indictment of man's inhumanity to man, but Goya was capable of capturing the beautiful and tender too, as he did in our final picture. The sunlight flirts with the hair of a lovely young milkmaid as she gazes downward, lost in her dreams. This lyric painting is even more remarkable when you consider that Goya painted it at the age of 81. The inspiration of art, the awareness of beauty, can help keep us young. It is my hope as we end our tour of one of my favorite museums that you will return again and again to these great paintings for inspiration. Each one is a rare legacy from the past, created for your enjoyment. Treasure them.